So welcome. It's December the 2nd, and I'm Dena, innovator in health and wellness, and tonight I'm also doubling as the convener for the Atlantic Common Law Assembly. If you're just coming in to join us in this Zoom meeting, and we just ask you to keep your mic off and your video off. Tonight's Zoom is entitled How to Decline Vaccinations and Stop Church-Run Trafficking or Sex Trafficking. Your microphone again is muted and your video is off to protect your privacy. Just admit a few more people in here, and to also help keep the recording, the audio quality optimal. Questions can be emailed in advance. I haven't had anyone email any questions so far, but you could post your questions in the chat box. If you'd hold off your questions until about halfway through, Kevin will do his presentation, and then at the half to the hour, we'll take questions. If you wanted to put them in caps, they kind of stand out and we can see your question or comment easily. And if you're calling in from a phone, you might not have access to that chat feature, but we love your participation because it's really your questions and your comments that helps formulate this presentation to the public. So what if the current craziness is all really simply a test of our strength and certainty, of our love for humanity? At the border of chaos and order is where we have maximum growth. So what are you doing to expose the genocide of the past and the present? And how are you going to help shift that paradigm? How are you declining the tyranny? We'll talk about that tonight. So welcome to Kevin. This is a topic that's near and dear to both our hearts. As a chiropractor for 22 years, when I started speaking about the dangers of vaccines, I got my knuckles wrapped in a big fine and suspended, and eventually had to surrender my license because the health department was wanting me to be silent about these dangers of vaccines. And Kevin's was a United Church minister, and he starts exposing the crimes against church and state. Of course, that was whisked away from him quickly. So tonight's presentation is going to be interesting to sort of see where we go and how we apply that to common law. So welcome, Kevin. Annett.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks,
Do you have
Dena.
any opening remarks about what we're going to talk about tonight?
Yeah, well, I mean, I wanted to inject a note of levity, believe it or not. It's a letter I just read. I wanted to read it out. But it's important to remember at one of the early healing conferences I went into near Dryden, Ontario, I was the only white guy there. It was filled with a hall filled with 300 people, all of them survivors of these death camps, schools and Indian hospitals. And before they did anything, they had a comedian called Moccasin Joe get up, and he just did his routine, right? And of course, these were all in jokes, like reservation jokes, right? Like about eating roadkill and stuff like that. So I didn't get any of their jokes, but everyone was in stitches, right? They were just having a real laugh. And interestingly, I'd never been to a conference before. People opened up more after and were able to talk about stuff because they weren't going in with this really oppressed state of mind. Something else had been freed in them. And so I think, that's why we often say humor and music and everything is a good way to approach really serious issues. Mandatory vaccination is a constant theme running through our history of genocide in Canada. This is just the latest expression of it. If you look at genocide in history, it's often described as a public health measure. The first Indian schools were set up. If you look at the newspaper articles in the late 1800s in Canada, all these church groups are saying tuberculosis and other diseases are spreading from the Indians to us, when in fact it's the other way around. We'd introduced them to them. But as a public health measure, we need to confine these Indians. The racial segregation laws in Nazi Germany were seen as a public health measure. They were called that because Jews and Slavs are kind of vermin and they're going to pollute the body politic, so we have to isolate them. So exactly the same mentality is happening now with mandatory vaccinations. And this public health measure is the latest word. COVID means the latest stage in genocide. And so it's really important to understand the history. But leading into that, I wanted to just read this article. Not an article, it's a letter I just wrote to the Quesnel, British Columbia newspaper, the Quesnel Caribou Observer. And I just sent it out today. Dear editor, recently your newspaper reported how the W.A. Fraser Middle School in Abbotsford has asked its pupils to, quote, name 5 positive things that happened in Indian residential schools, unquote. Before I rise to this challenge, let me observe how appropriate it is that a Quesnel publication would report on this issue, considering how well-versed is your fair city in dealing with Indians. The extermination by smallpox of your local Chilcotin people during the summer of 1864 was no small deed, thanks to their forced vaccination by Anglican missionary and land speculator John Sheepshanks. Anyway, as for the positive aspects of the Indian residential schools, here goes. First, the schools gave brown children as young as 3 daily physical exercise by allowing them to scrub floors, dig graves, paw through garbage pails for discarded food, and hunt for new places to hide. Secondly, they provided generous tax write-offs, land grants, and oodles of cash to the Catholic, Anglican, and United churches. Thirdly, they encouraged Canada's scientific research in such fields as mandatory vaccinations, mind control technology, bacteriological warfare, involuntary drug testing, and pain threshold studies. Fourth, they toughened the moral fiber of children by showing them the unimportance of luxuries like good food, warm clothing, and painkillers during teeth extractions. And finally, fifth point, they offered necessary late-night sexual relief to clergy and staff who might otherwise have acted out their aggression on their loved ones. But wait, let's not stop there. Think of all the other positive things that Canadians are still not aware of regarding those places. Heathen children learned to sing Christmas carols. The surplus Aboriginal populations were brought down to sustainable levels. The generally superfluous RCMP acquired a new lease on life by bravely rounding up and manacling children and hunting them when they ran away. Without the Indian residential schools, there might still be wild Indians lurking about Stanley Park, scaring off the tourists and driving down property values. After they closed, the schools continue to provide employment to generations of social workers, parole officers, psychiatrists, and lawyers. And finally, don't forget that the legacy of the schools eventually allowed white Canadians to feel better about themselves and have their guilt and legal liability healed. So in closing, let me say that I intend to send these answers to the W.A. Fraser Middle School. I hope that this will encourage them in their continued effort to teach Canadians the important role played by the Indian residential schools in upholding the values that we as a people hold so dear. Sincerely, Kevin Annett, and murderbydecree.com, copy to the Canadian media. Now, I've been told my cynicism and sarcasm can get the better of me often. Maybe it didn't. Maybe you found that illuminating. I doubt if they'll print it, but it's how we have to, in a way, approach this stuff, because when we're talking about how this has been going on, and there's just a news item I also wanted to share. This last week, from some of our people on the West Coast, we found out that for the last, since at least the middle of November, Health Canada has been going into the Ahousaht and the Ucluelet Indian reservations. These are on the West Coast of Vancouver Island on Long Beach. And they've been testing. They've been injecting people with, according to the source I have there, they've been injecting the AstraZeneca and Pfizer vaccines for COVID into the people there. That's not new. They did that with the Tamiflu drug at the Ahousaht Reserve in 2013. It was the first area in the country declared a pandemic zone during that swine flu snafu. And they're going back there again, not surprisingly, because under the Indian Act, they can test out any drug they want on an Indian on a reservation. They can't refuse it or they go to jail. So those vaccinations are happening now, and they're hitting the Indian reservations, probably other places in Canada. The story also that I heard from health people in Vancouver was that as early as December 10th, they're going to start vaccinating healthcare workers in senior citizen homes on the West Coast. And we've heard similar stories from Canada or America. So this whole thing of vaccinations and how we resist it is on the agenda now. It's already being rolled out. It's not going to be New Year. It's starting now. And I wanted to get all of your input on this, things you've heard, your own thoughts about this, but I see it as 3 basic approaches to this. There's the whole educational aspect, which we've all been doing, learning and also sharing what we know. There's the defensive and then the offensive. And up till now, we've been focusing very much on defending ourselves. What do we do? What do you say to police? How do you respond in all these situations? Also, in terms of, there's already safe houses, also kind of underground networks being built up for when people come to the door. And one of the aspects of the vaccination thing is, like they do on the Hausa Indian Reservation, they literally go door to door and will register people for vaccinations. That seems to be the approach they're going to use. They've tried that out on natives already. And as we speak, it's happening. So what do you do in that situation? Where do you go? How do you respond? We had a long talk about that last night in the Vancouver Assembly. And it came down again to not just an individual response, but how well can we organize our defense network? Urgent response teams, the sheriffs. How are we going to actually stand down these people, and can we? I mean, that's an important question right now for us to address. And it's also tied into the whole question of how the vaccination industry is very much tied into child trafficking. We find that the same, for example, this is a member, as a minister on Vancouver Island in Port Alberta, I encountered this from women, Native women, who come to me and told me, when the Health Canada officials showed up on reservation, they would often take the kids away. And the vaccine and the child trafficking was very tied together. And we find the same thing happen in any health emergency, in any natural emergency, whatever. A lot of children go missing because under the guise of child protection and healthcare, they're trafficked. The same groups that were trafficking them for a century or more are still doing it. One of the places the Vancouver group is targeting our assembly for actions, not simply protests, but occupations and reclamations, is the Holy Rosary Catholic Church in downtown Vancouver, which is a hotspot of child trafficking. There's a tunnel network that staff members I've spoken to there have seen. It runs from the basement, sub-basement area of the Catholic Church right to the Vancouver Club and the waterfront, where ships with false hulls bring people in from overseas and transport children out. We know those networks exist, and under the whole vaccination, guys, that's another aspect of how we protect children, by targeting these places where we know the trafficking is going on. So I'm going to throw that out. I know it's a lot to deal with. That's why my attempted humor preceded all this. But I'd like your feedback and thoughts about this. In Vancouver, we're taking some steps which we can talk about. Dena, I hopefully will be on the call. She said she was going to be. And that's what I want to put out there, and just take questions, comments now. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I would just like to, keep up with your humor. And this was something that a friend had wrote today. It says, when they tell me I need to have a vaccine, if I want my freedom back, what she's gonna say is, fuck you, bye, and head to the hills. So, that was kind of a cute little thing. Dena is on the call, so thank you. That'll be great. I would just like to comment first on what you said about the tax. What I think people don't understand, many people, is that, we actually pay for these vaccines via our taxes. We actually send a portion right to the Vatican. So by paying our taxes, we're not only paying them to damage us and to injure us, but we're also paying for the, pedophiles in the Vatican and the sex trafficking. So really our money, we need to kind of, and I think this is what we've talked about, right, in common law and in our assemblies, is how can we take that money that we're putting towards the corrupt corporation and bring it back into our own communities. So I think that's a point that you had mentioned. And the letters, there's a lot of members on here. I know Banji and Wendell and a lot of members are writing letters. Ferdinand's here, are writing letters to, MPs, to police departments, to, you don't have to be a common law member to write the science and to share it. So I think that's important. So do we have any questions right now? And I just ask you to keep your mic off for now. If you want to speak, that's great. You could just, we can bring you in, but rather than have everybody speak at once, it is recorded. Ferdinand says stop paying taxes. Anyone have any questions, comments? Thank you, Norm. Norm sent information. Governments of Canada and others spent billions of dollars to purchase COVID test kits and diagnostic equipment back in 2018. Yes, and he listed a BitChute channel there. Anyone else have any questions or comments? I'd like to comment on the vaccine. Bishop had mentioned that they have a protocol for detoxing from vaccines. But in the vaccine injuries that I'd seen in my practice over the 22 years, I mean, this one is particularly devastating because not only do you have the heavy metals, you know, that creates inflammation in your brain and in your body, the retroviruses, not only from, you know, fetal cells that are injected into you, but from animal tissue like monkey, mouse, rat, cat, that are injected into your body. But now they have something called DARPA hydrogel, which I'm sure someone, Esther, could you mute yourself there? I'll just mute you. DARPA hydrogel that actually changes your DNA, so you become, you know, an interface with AI technology. So some of the vaccines, you know, you can detox from and turn things around, but the DARPA hydrogel, there's no way going back as far as I know. So let's go to the chat box and see what else we have here. Ainsley says, I know lots of us are talking or thinking about running for the hills. Yes. What happens when they come to the hills looking for us? So Kevin, let's talk about that. What if somebody is coming towards you?
Well,
with,
there's nowhere to hide.
How do we stand under common law right away? If you're sort of a citizen in Kanata, let's do two things. If you're a citizen in Kanata, how would you approach it? If you're just a public person not involved in an assembly or a Kanata citizenship, how would you approach it?
Well, if you don't have another jurisdiction and our umbrella of our jurisdiction over you, you don't have a recourse. You're within their jurisdiction and you have no basis on which to oppose it lawfully, right? One of the things we're doing is not only encourage citizenship, but then going out and being proactive and going to the police and saying, we want you to pledge not to enforce vaccination methods on the people. We want you to sign something saying you're going to pledge that, because if not, you're colluding in a crime. We will hold you liable. And, you know, in other words, go to that. Like somebody used the example last night, they were given a ticket. One of our sheriffs was in a store and this goon threatened to give him a ticket. And I said to Peter, what you say in response is, we have our own tickets ready. You say, you're within our jurisdiction of the Republic. You're breaking our law of September 8th when you're imposing these methods on us. You're going to get fined right now. What's your name? Like, you go to them and we take the energy, like Sun Tzu says all the time, we establish the terrain and the issue. We don't wait to be attacked. Because the old saying is, any defensive posture invites attack, especially in a climate like this. If we're defensive all the time, that'll encourage them to come at us. If we go at them and say to the police, you must stand down and not enforce these measures, that'll get them pause to think. And you find the honest cops. There was a couple who was at our meeting last night, and they are in serious trouble now because their daughter wouldn't mask. And Dana, maybe you can clarify this. I forget all the details, but basically they got targeted over the internet, and they went to the police, and the police, this cop who came over to give them advice was actually very sympathetic and said, you don't have to mask. I mean, he wasn't pushing it on them, and they were approaching him like a human being. And the next step is to say to that cop, you know, we need you on our side. We need you to defend the rights of the people and work with us. We want to be in partnership, so to bring you over. But we don't have anything to bring them over to unless we have our own republic, our own jurisdiction. Otherwise, we're just speaking to somebody all within the corporate jurisdiction. So citizenship now is crucial. And anyway, that's, I think, self-apparent when you start engaging with this stuff.
I posted a link to Bee's video. She did a video from the UK, but she had some useful advice too. She says to decline, not refuse. I think when you refuse something, you're kind of put into that kind of paradigm, right? That duality back and forth. Right. But to gratefully decline, gratefully you're rising above that paradigm. So her tips were, again, to ask, are you medically qualified, right, to recommend I mask or inject or take my temperature? Do you hold liability insurance for this? The ingredients of the mask, right, can cause lung problems and diseases, and the ingredients of the vaccines. Can you advise if there's any harm for me medically with this? Is there any double-blind tests or safety studies? And that could be also for the vaccine, but also for masking. I'll hold you personally liable for damages. Do you stand by this product and you're willing to accept liability? Prepare to sign a statement of liability. I think that's important. and to compensate me if I'm injured. So I posted that link in the chat box if you want to go to that and take a look at it. I thought they were some helpful tips. As a chiropractor, I had to give informed consent. So any regulated practitioner has to give you informed consent in order to be covered under their own professional liability insurance. So I think that's an important point, even outside of common law, their own liability insurance that protects them in their practice. So, to ask about the side effects and double-blind studies, I think are really important. We have some questions here. I'm just going to go back because there was a lobster fisherman, Canadian power shift. So Norm talks about the vaccines, the aluminum particles. Yes, not only the aluminum, but nano aluminum particles, but the mercury. I want to know how to keep my fellow lobster fishermen, friends, under control during this lobstering situation and unite them under common law assembly.
Good.
Is this regarding sex trafficking, Demian? Is this, maybe you can talk a little, give us a little.
You got to watch out for those lobster fishermen. Okay. There's a bunch of questions here that people have asked. Go
ahead.
What kind of action can one take to bring more notice that's genocide? Education action. We're going to be planning more actions soon that we can film and share with people. We are, we're going to get into that. When Dena speaks up, we have more to share about that. There's people asking about how to become citizen. Go to republicofcanada.ca under oath of citizenship. You fill it out, the PDF, scan it, email it to us, Republic National Council at Proton Mail, and then we'll connect you up. And Kevin, will you accept a citizenship card with 3 maple leafs rather than stars? Yes or no? It's not up to me. I don't make the decision. That will be decided at the Constitutional Convention in April. So if you very much want to have 3 maple leaves, write an amendment. If you're a citizen, you can make amendments, send it in. It'll be voted on there. Was the Rosary Church not the one the Kanata Republic reclaimed as per what you shared last week? Yes. It's already been reclaimed in 2008. There was actually all the churches in Vancouver were legally evicted by the Squamish traditional elder Capilano, and he named me as his legal agent to enforce that eviction. So yeah, it's been the hotspot, a lot of the stuff, that one church, but all the downtown churches are plugged into that trafficking network in Vancouver. Can Kevin, sorry, go ahead.
So how do we stop that? I mean, to take over the church reclamation, but media attention. How else could we stop that? Not just in the churches, but
last time we did it, well, you target the places where it's happening, and you do exactly what we did at the church. We went in there, and the one occupation blew this whole thing about the residential schools wide open. The government started talking apology within 2 weeks of that. The whole TRC thing happened out of that. So we've got a list of these places, and I'm sure that with some research, of your own, especially if you talk to people in the native world, this is often very commonly known because they're targeted all the time by it, right?
And I mean, it's not just the churches. Hollywood is filled with pedophiles, right? So I just got kicked off a call today because, I've previously, given information about this professional development coach who runs kind of a sex trafficking business within the personal development. So I think, exposing that information, whether it's in the church or state, or if it's in a, another agency, I think is important. Could we take over a well-known Catholic church, open it to the homeless right at Christmas, says Wayne?
You not only can, but you have to under international law, because the Catholic Church has already been found guilty as a transnational criminal organization. It launders money, it traffics children, launders money for the mob, all proven in courts, not just our own, the common law court, but other courts in America have established that. Therefore, as a transnational criminal body, they don't have the right to their own property. People can lawfully seize their assets and property. We have every right to go in there, open it to the homeless. Brilliant idea. That's exactly what we should be doing.
Ainsley says, could we use a notice of conditional acceptance?
To what?
I'm not sure. Ainsley, do you want to qualify that? Could we use a notice?
Acceptance of what?
Yeah, for a vaccine. So say like a document that says, I will accept this if you provide all of this information and you take full liability and you promise that you are medically qualified to give this to me, and to, yeah, basically all the things that you had said, Dena, but in an official like document that you make them sign.
Well, the only problem
And they
with
won't
that,
sign it.
yeah,
is the idea.
the only problem, Ainsley, is that when you do that, it's forgetting that they've already placed themselves above any liability. The laws about big pharma and more politicians in Canada and their servants, like cops and health officials and all that, they've all been made legally immune from prosecution for anything. So they're beyond liability. And so it's not going to, that approach has been nullified by the fact they've indemnified themselves already.
So Damien says, no, regarding the First Nations and hauling off their gear in the off-season escalations with the Spinica band. I don't know if you know about that, Kevin, or if you can comment on that at all.
No, I don't. Not about that, no.
We're doing our flag raising. Oh, Dena, so Dena is here. Dena, did you want to come on and talk about the flag raising and the reclamation event on December 20th that you're doing out in Vancouver?
Hi, yes, definitely. Hi, Dena, Kevin, everybody. Yeah, we had an amazing assembly meeting last night, and we feel really empowered. We're getting up and going after a couple of infiltrations and starting to run a really tight ship, with our assembly, like really being careful with vetting and everything. So at our assembly meeting last night, we confirmed that we will be doing a flag raising land reclamation event on December 20th. So that's going to be in a, as of yet, confidential location, because what we're going to do is we're going to record the whole event. So we're going to have a bagpipe player. It's going to be very high vibe. Raise our flag. I'm ordering more flags as we speak. And also the mini ones that you hold in your hand. And so what we'll be doing is recording the whole event with, we're going to have our bullhorn, the, what do you call that thing?
Megaphone. Megaphone.
Megaphone. Record the whole event. Have all our assembly members there, whoever else wants to join us, and then post it on all platforms. We have a couple members with BitChute channels, Kevin YouTube channel, Instagram influencers, and in that way show our presence, because we need to be showing our public presence that we are here and we are forming a new nation. So that's very exciting. We are also going to have a separate event with a Christmas party with our assembly. Planning that. We are also planning a workshop where we're going to be learning how to respond to travel restrictions. So when you're driving in your car and you're stopped by a policeman, what do? Do you show your ID? The words you use are very important. How to defy quarantine once that happens. How do we speak to public officials? How to decline the vaccine. So Dena, that document you sent in your email for the Zoom was amazing on the right words to use. So we are doing a workshop on all those things coming up next week. The sheriffs will be going to police stations to deputize officers. So basically talk to them, and a lot of police officers are on our side. They're sick and tired of these COVID measures. They don't want to enforce them. So we're going to be deputizing police officers, bringing them to our side. So a lot of exciting things going on. And now we're going to be starting our campaign against churches and child sex trafficking. So on January 15th, which I believe, Kevin, is the 5th anniversary of the Republic of Kanata.
6th.
We are going to be doing a huge public event, hopefully going to the Holy Rosary Church where the child trafficking is going on. and doing a big event there. So January 15, we encourage everybody to do the same all across the nation. So yeah, very excited about everything that's going on.
Good. Thanks, Dana. So Darren says, how do we reclaim the waters on our coast to or capture any of these vessels participating in the trafficking? Kevin, did you have any thoughts on that? How to reclaim the waters of the coast?
How to reclaim the waters?
And the vessels that are participating in the trafficking.
Oh, that. Well, that takes, that would be a subject for the action group that's actually going to do it. And that's probably something we shouldn't talk about here, but we know exactly where they are and where they operate out of. It's really obvious on the Vancouver waterfront. It's Ballantine Pier. It's been known about by longshoremen and natives and women working on the street. Everybody knows about it. It's not a matter of, you know, that's, I don't know if you saw that movie, The Untouchables, right? And Al Capone, Chicago. And these honest cops are about to go in and step on a Capone's operation, and it's right inside a bank. And the guy says, "You mean it's so out in the open?" And the other cop says, "The problem isn't not knowing that it's going on. The problem is who wants to buck Capone, right?" And that's the point. Like, no one, everyone knows it's going on, but who wants to go up against these guys? Because you'll get killed, frankly, or worse. So unless you're very smart and you do it in a way that embarrasses the shit out of them, and you find insiders willing to help. And that's always the test to go beyond talk to actually stopping stuff. So that's a whole other topic. And people who seriously want to be involved in these actions, we can talk separately about that, right?
And we've put our website for the Atlantic Common Law Assembly in the chat box. Dana, if you wanted to put yours there, or I think Paul came on for your other assemblies and where they are for people, that would be great. Norm from New Brunswick says there needs to be a few overhauls in the Republic of Kanata constitutional draft. Yes, we've sent it out. We'd love to have your feedback. And what's the email that he would send any amendments or suggestions to for the constitutional draft?
Well, you have to be you can look at it, but you have to be a citizen to actually make amendments and vote on it. And you write to Republic National Council at Proton Mail.
And Damien still has the question about the commercial fishermen. So Kevin might not know a lot about that, Damien. So I don't know if we can, if you can send information on that to him, maybe we can, you can formulate an opinion on that. Brent, what's the best way to wake people up gently? Do you have a comment on that, Kevin?
I don't think you are woken up gently. I mean, I think we're really woken up by when we get kicked in the head ourselves and something happens to us. That wakes us up quicker, right? Because, you know, we don't want to change unless we have to, and that's the reality of human beings. Like, we talk around stuff to avoid difficult, uncomfortable, risky situations. And when our backs are to the wall, we begin to get attacked, then we have to change quick. Then our ideas have to change quick or we're dead. So that's why I say, you know, we have to put ourselves in situations where we're willing to risk and lose something. Otherwise, we're not really seeing what's going on. We tend to, you know, put barriers between that and us realistically. I mean, that's what I've learned. But.
And Michelle would like to give some feedback. So if you wanted to come on, Michelle. And Norm is saying what prevented the Nova Scotia fishermen from working out a win-win. Well, in the, I know in the Windsor Passage, the fishermen are really working well with the Mi'kmaq, you know, right alongside. So it's just depending on the area in the province. But Darren Porter did a video, and I've been to 2 different events there where they've closed off the highway and trying to get the fish passage open so the salmon can spawn. So in some areas, Norm, the fishermen are working really well with the Mi'kmaq. Okay, are you there, Michael? Michelle?
Yes, I am, yeah. What I was wanting to say is being francophone, asking permission to do something is not even in our concept. So often I hear when people think they're free or we're asking people to become free, they, most of the time, we're not even coming from a place believing that we have the right to be free. So Kevin knows now that he has the right to be free, and you can hear it in his voice. But a lot of the questions being asked is because most of us are so much running after time that often we're not within ourselves, and we're in what Kevin was at the beginning, we're in the reactive to the stimuli, and then we're fighting a reaction, and that's a losing battle. But what I want to say is, in Mexico is very interesting. They don't have this English. They have an attitude that if you don't ask permission, being told no and after the fact is a lot easier to deal with than being told no before they did the thing. So, and so it's kind of an attitude of, I don't need to have permission to get a megaphone. And I've been in many Catholic church. If you walked in there with 5 people and said, you're all leaving, nobody would stop nobody, because nobody in there has really any power. They've been submitted so long, but somebody would have to tell them to do something. And you could take over a church so easily, almost anywhere in a local parish, because there's only 1 or 2, maybe 3 people there at any time, and unless there's a meeting happening. But even then, you just tell them we're taking over. And the Catholics are so weak now because there's no more soul anymore, and in reality, they're just the zombies of what was the beliefs, believing they're the good side. And when they wake up from the dream, they're not even really living a spiritual life as a Catholic. They're practicing a dead form of being spiritual. And it's very interesting to see, because I go to a lot of churches, and ministers don't like me because I question the form they're using of almost a blackmail to what you're allowed to get in the church. If you pray, and if you're part of this, and then a lot of people don't come because they don't like to do the 4 prayers before eating. And yeah, it's very interesting. But anyway, the believing that we don't have the right, I think. Yeah, I'm finished.
No, maybe you could answer this question for Wayne. We've got a lot of questions coming in here. Where is trafficking happening in Nova Scotia? Do you know the name of a church that we could target, like they're doing in Vancouver?
Well, I would say that Halifax and the Khyber Club, and this is where all the rich people of the millionaires and above show up in regular suits, and they get blowjobs while smoking a cigar. And
maybe
in Nova Scotia. In Nova Scotia.
In Nova Scotia, yeah. Maybe we'll talk about.
I've read in my studies so far.
This is Halifax downtown.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk.
From what I've read, between 2006 to 2015, from CPS services alone, 2,600 kids gone. From places like the Ray Allen Center, like these youth centers and stuff like that. They're down on fucking Pleasant Street, like Dartmouth. Kids go there and they get lost, picked up, gone. Like CPS is a huge culprit in Nova Scotia. That I don't know if it's a church, it might be, but I know CPS.
Okay, thank you for that, guys. Kevin, do you have a comment on that?
An important thing people need to remember is that there's a standing policy in the Catholic Church that applies to every Catholic in the world, not just clergy, but every Catholic. It's called Crimen Solicitanis. It's in our site, murderbydecree.com. It's been standing policy since 1929. It says when children are raped or harmed, the police are not to be told. Everyone is to be silenced. It's a pontifical secret, it's called, which means the Pope is saying nobody talks about this. And that breeds in an environment where children can be trafficked openly. So every Catholic priest in the world is and every Catholic is part of a criminal conspiracy to aid and abet child abuse and trafficking. So every church is potentially a place where this can happen under that policy. And no pope has ever disavowed the policy, including the present one. They all stand by it.
So Esther says, thank you for that, Kevin. How come the child sex trafficking is still going on in the churches, which have been reclaimed by the Kanata Republic?
Well, we haven't physically reclaimed any yet as the Republic. We did occupations and seizures of churches as part of our movement over the years, including, like, for example, Squamish Elder Capilano and that. But you know, if we had owned it and stopped it, that's one thing, but we don't. We go in there briefly and then we leave, and it carries on because they've got billions of dollars and we don't, is the short answer, right?
Paul had a question from the Ontario Common Law Assembly. In regards to the design of the Republic of Kanata flag, Kevin, please confirm if every assembly can design and create their own flag to represent their assembly.
Yeah, I said earlier, I answered on the thing here, I said, basically the present Republic flag unites us, but people can experiment with their own images for their local work, as long as it's clear that it's linked to our national Republic. So yeah, come up with anything you want, but it's good to have a common symbol to unite us. If that's changed at the convention in April, then that'll be our flag, but we need that common national symbol, really.
Wendell talks about pedio woods, you know, Hollywood, do they all need and can't just get enough of their adrenochrome? So again, that's part of not only the experimentation, but blood extraction and getting the kids scared enough to create these drugs. We need to go to child trafficking locations, says Kanata. Was referring to the assembly flags. Okay. Do you see another question there, Kevin? There's a lot coming in there. How can we expect the police to come to our side? This is from Darren. How can we expect the police to come to our side when we're not their employer? Is that part of bringing them over as deputies? Appealing to their humanity, perhaps, Darren? Do you have a
the fact that they have children and they can be harmed. We need to say, is this why the Catholic churches are closed down on the Eastern Shore? Several are closed. Does the Vatican own them? Ultimately, yes, but it's set up, the structure of these churches is set up to avoid lawsuits. So there's different, you can't trace where the buck stops. So like the diocese will own it, the building, but ultimately the diocese is accountable to the Archbishop in Rome and the cardinals, right, who really run the church. So yeah, it's all about money, basically.
Darren says, hire pirates in the international waters to reclaim the ships. Yeah, I like that idea. Joanne, the guy from last week, talked to Jesse yet of Earth United. I don't know if that's a question. Did the guy from last week? So if you have any questions or comments about mandatory vaccines, any ideas in how to gratefully decline a vaccine, any ideas on, you know, reclamation, stopping the church and state, really, because Justin Trudeau, I mean, that was a great document that you said. I called it the corrupt queen, but the 60,000 kids that were genocide between 1896 and 1996 or something.
About 107 years. 1891 was the first time the government started authorizing and funding the schools and churches that are being running on their own. And the last one closed in 1996. And the death rate is a lot higher than what was ever shown. But, you know, as genocide usually is, it's always, you never know the total figure, but it's half them, they admit half never came back. 100,000 maybe, children.
So Wayne asked who here has taken over a church. I haven't yet. You've taken over a church. Excellent points. Okay, so Kevin, could you give me the email address once again to send the draft corrections?
Yeah, I sent it. It's Republic National Council at ProtonMail.
Yeah, and Paul's sending something with the test kits, the COVID test kits. And Ernest says, were you presenting the evidence? Brussels common law court case. Kevin, were you in Canada representing evidence by Skype to jurors and judges abroad?
I was there, and I was also on Skype because I traveled around a lot. But I was in Brussels when it opened, And I was also on the ground working with people gathering evidence and protecting witnesses and things like that during that time.
So this is interesting. Thank you, Pat, for sharing this. Yes, I'm a survivor of a trafficking by a CPS. I got myself out. Oh my goodness. So I don't know if you want to talk about that, or if there's anything that you want to share, information that you know, might help us help other people. But thank you for sharing that. Definitely like to be part of anything in that aspect. Well, Patricia, I don't know where you are, but there's representation here from Vancouver, from Ontario, from Atlantic Canada. So you can connect with any of our assemblies within Kanata, and we are having meetings trying to kind of look and focus at that. So thank you for sharing. And
Chris says, please post the link again regarding how to reject vaccines.
So, you know, I think that it's really important. Somebody talked about this, I think it was Michelle, you know, that we're not having to ask for permission. Like, we're asking for a mask break. We're asking for permission to breathe. Or can I breathe now? Can I take off my mask? Can I shop here? You know, I have a friend who carries a mask, and family members carries a mask in their purse. I said to them, you know, you're not certain. If you got that mask, you're not certain about your agenda. So I think it's kind of a lack of self-esteem, right? We're not being the authority of our own life. We're not authoring our own life. And I've seen this in chiropractic. You know, our chiropractic profession wanted to sell out to the medical profession because they wanted prescription rights to write, you know, prescriptions for medications, because they're not knowing the power in the, you know, healing power of our body. They're wanting to sell out. And I think we had some comments about, you know, other common law assemblies and what other people are doing, and other, you know, Earth United and Chris James and whatever. You know, it's important, I think, to unify and to, you know, all be working in a common ground, but not sell out what we have. We have a nation. Who has that? We have a nation. We have our own constitution. We have assemblies across the country. I would say stand up, own it, you know, be proud of who we are, not sell out to any other organization. So I think it's important not to have to ask permission, but to own who we are. And I think that's essential, whether it's vaccines or masks or temperature or sex trafficking, is kind of owning who we are.
Right. Right, Dena. Well said.
Any other questions, comments? Where's the money in the Catholic mafia? So again, some of our taxes, Kevin had mentioned this in a previous video. Kevin, you had given me a website where a certain percentage, I don't know, 3 to 5% of our taxes goes to the Vatican. So as someone else, a common law person that we'd interviewed, he said it was 30 to 40%, but Kevin said, had qualified that and said there's no way that we could know the exact amount.
It's right here. I've just posted it on this board, concordatwatch.eu. A concordat is a treaty. The Vatican likes to pretend they're a state, which they're not. But a concordat is an agreement signed between the Vatican and some government. And there's financial concordats where over 100 countries channel taxpayers' money directly into the Vatican Bank. And they claim at Concordat Watch it's between 1% and 3%, but which is still a hell of a lot of money. But there's also all sorts of other things that they do, like in the US alone in 2013, they made, the Catholic Church raked in 13.4 billion. And they paid no taxes, and only about 1% of that went to charity. The rest went into the Vatican Bank. So it's a huge money-sucking octopus.
And, you know, the World Health Organization and the UN, I mean, they're all in bed together. The World Health Organization's largest donor is Bill Gates. And the World Health Organization is the authority that all our politicians, you know, bow to. And the World Health Organization had a mandate in 1973 to kill using vaccines. So when I point that out to the politicians, they again think I'm a little delusional. But Vanjie says, I think we should start investigating the orphanages here in Halifax. So I think that's a great idea, Vanjie. And in a week, I'd be interested in helping you with that. Because at Mount Cashel Orphanage in Newfoundland, I don't know if there's anyone on the call from Newfoundland, but where I grew up, there were, Father James Hickey in the little fishing village where I grew up had 23 counts of sexual assault, rape against him. And it was Mount Cashel Orphanage where they had, it was a sex trafficking business, basically. So I think the orphanages, the Catholic orphanages, would be a good place to start, Angie. Genocide protection and war capitalism, Cold War propaganda, CBC belief, and CBC. Oh, so CBC, yeah, Michelle connects with CBC, but they are the broadcasting company that won't publish the story unless it's approved by Snopes, husband and wife team on the Monsanto payroll. So any of the information that I gave them about holistic doctors that were researching vaccines that mysteriously disappeared, they wouldn't publish. So that's interesting. Your internet connection is unstable.
I think we talked about right at the beginning, we have to keep things in perspective. The vaccinations are happening now. They're starting with natives, they're starting with old people, but this could be an issue tomorrow on your doorstep. They're not going to give a notice. It started already. Okay. So there's no more urgent question than this right now. Right. And people have got to be thinking in terms of not just personally what I'm going to do, but how are we going to organize our defense and our offense? And I really want to keep reminding people about that. How we stand on different groups or on common law or some abstract issue is not going to help us when they come to the door. And this is an immediate possibility. So just a reminder.
So I just posted the decline vaccine JPEG. That was the questions that I went to by D, and I just wanted to make a mention that it was one of our members, Carolyn, who actually put it into a PDF, which I'll also post. It's at the front of the chat, but I'll just post it again now. And this is, how to approach somebody who's trying to vaccinate you. But standing under common law, I think for us who are members of Kanata is the first step. And then, asking for ingredients, side effects, holding them to liability, and standing in your power. People can feel your certainty. And if you're uncertain, they'll walk all over you. Informed consent to the
We're going to draft a letter. Yeah, we're going to draft a letter to the local police, and you might want to use this with your own local cops. And you can, of course, there's already the stand down order connected to our September 8th law, where we've already asked them to stand down. But this is a direct invitation to say, do not enforce these vaccination orders on us. Help us defend our liberties and our children. We have to make that direct appeal immediately. I would really prioritize that, doing that. So they see, okay, here's the thing, they already know about us. We already know that we're being talked about all the time in police agencies. So it's best for us to approach them and say, look, we want you to know who we are. We're not domestic terrorists. We're human beings standing by the law, standing under new jurisdiction, inviting them in. We need to make those connections now because we won't have time later. When this shit comes down, we have a narrow window that's shrinking every day. And we've got to act on it, right?
When Anastasia and I went to the market last week, we were not greeted very friendly without our masks, and they had called two police cars on a paddy wagon for the four of us. And when I seen the first police car come in, I encouraged them to call the police. I ran over and I said, I'm the bad guy. And here's the documents that we handed to them. This is the mask research. This is my Kanata citizenship card. So I didn't wait for them to come get me. I approached them and I said, can I have your card, please? Because you're going to see me again. This is unlawful. And the information that I sent out to the MPs, I also sent to the police, and the questions I asked them, are all government officials privy to the quarantine censors? If so, why is Randy Hillier the only guy asking questions? Sent him the clip. If the PCR test is a hoax, which we know it is, why is it being used as a diagnostic tool? And if you are aware of unlawful measures but choose to do nothing, could you help personally be liable for damages? So all the MPs, the MLAs, and also our police department got that email from me last week. Andrew, you're up there. Did you want to speak?
There's a couple of questions there about how do we protect our children. Yeah. Okay.
Did you want to answer that, Kevin?
Oh, I'm just looking at Patricia's question. How do we not allow our children to be taken by being accused of neglect, by not allowing vaccines for them? How do we not allow families to not be jailed or separated? Moral power and willing to stand up and be organized so that we can be activated, to be there on the front line with people when they're being confronted. We need, again, build up our urgent response teams and be proactive all the time. Go in groups, speak to the police, have training in what do you do in a situation. You know, you're not going to outfight them physically, but you can outfight them morally, and you can outthink them. We have moral power. We have to use it, right? Not be afraid. Fear is contagious. It makes us run and look to other solutions. So, but the details of that, Patricia, we got to work out on the ground. And like I say, Andrew and others, maybe start holding meetings of planning exactly that. How do we defend our children? How do we approach the cops? The whole bit, right? We're working on that in Vancouver. We can share that. Okay.
Dana says, can we all get this letter to the police and then we can circulate it to all cops nationwide? I think that's a great idea, right? To have kind of a nationwide where we, in each assembly, we have kind of that consistency and sharing that there's a group. I know Andrew and Tara, Andrew our sheriff and Tara our legal justice is working, or they're working on something like that right now, Dana. Darren, okay, he doesn't want me to say this here. Yeah, okay.
What sources can I provide for people currently being vaccinated on reservations? Do you mean what evidence do I have that people on reservations are being vaccinated? People are being vaccinated on reservations all the time. It's the law under the Indian Act. You can do it at all times. It's a constant thing that goes on. I've had people on my show describing as public health nurses watching them do it. They do it all the time, but I'm saying right now, they're also pushing the COVID vaccine. They're using the housing reservation like they did 7 years ago with swine flu to test out the COVID vaccine right now. And I got that from individuals, and I'm going out there hopefully soon, but I shouldn't have actually said that. But.
So, you know, there's many different vaccine groups. You know, our Canadian Vaccine Choice Canada is a great group if you're looking for resources, information, support. And then, you know, Children's Health Defense, I Can Decide with Del Big Tree are other great supports. I'd like to say Sally Alcorti would be still here with a vaccine-free world, but she was mysteriously disappeared. Go ahead.
Sorry, Dena, just to answer Dylan's question, he wanted the source. I guess by that you mean the source of information. We can't provide that, where the person will either be dead or disappeared, especially in the native world. You don't reveal sources.
So when these slugs are rolling out, no certificate, you'll be confined to your home, travel, they'll restrict travel. Yeah, so this is how they will do it, right? I don't think it'll be so much hold you down and stick the needle in. I think they'll be just like they're doing now with the masks, restricting flow, restricting travel, right, where you can shop, that sort of thing. So we have to create, I think,
right, they'll
own sustainable environment. Go ahead.
They'll register you, and eventually, very soon, I would say even before the new year, you're going to require certain ID, proof of ID. That's what COVID, someone suggested, meant certificate of vaccine identification. So without that certificate, you can't go in on the bus, you can't go anywhere, you can't travel, you can't get food. So they'll start people out that way. And that's why in terms of our defense, we have to think in terms of how do we operate off the radar, food sources, safe houses, ways to get around. How you duplicate that ID, we've got to talk to people with the technical know-how. How do we get an ID with showing that we've been vaccinated when we haven't? How can we duplicate it and distribute that en masse for people to have? I mean, those are the technical things we need to be working on right away, like today.
Esther says, has Trudeau actually mandated vaccines for all Canadians?
He announced they ordered 30 million doses from AstraZeneca. He announced that in September. 30 million.
Hey.
Is that is that a reality that they may come to the door with the vaccines? I can't wrap my head around that. That's insane, says Charlene. We need to share the resources. Light of Aquarius, says Michelle. Yes, December 21st, there's going to be a change. Norm says, educate yourself. COVID is a computer-generated fiction, simulation. It's not real. Evidence and information is readily available online. Yes, that's, and Norm has information in there. The pandemic, yeah, pandemic series is a great one to look at that. And Event 201, you know, what talks about how they were going to roll it out. Esther says can't get food. Yes, so we have to think about how we're going to prepare. So Bishop, maybe we can connect after. I know you're sending me some information there privately, so that's great. Charlene, that's the real question, reality or fear propaganda. So I think what we have to, what we have to do is kind of focus on what we want to see. We have to make provisions, you know, for our families and start now, as you said, Kevin, being proactive, educating, you know, the physician. They ordered 500,000 flu shots for Nova Scotia. And I had 3 emails from my medical doctor encouraging me to go in and get the flu vaccine so I could have the corona sequence injected into me. So we need to be educating, you know, our MDs, our politicians, the police, our neighbors, our friends, everybody, you know, with this information. How else do you see us sort of bringing this forward, Kevin?
Organize a group, a small group among you, just like we are doing, of people who are willing to act. And you got to ask people how far they're willing to go, right, on this. And you got to know that and be clear about it before you start this, because ultimately it'll mean a confrontation, maybe even a violent one. And we got to be prepared for that. You know, last night, Peter, one of our sheriffs, said, I'm going to die before I take that shot. You know, and ask yourself, is he willing to do that? And it's fine in the abstract, but when you have a choice between life and death, you can live if you get the shot or die if you don't. You have to ask yourself, just look at that possibility, because we don't want to pussyfoot around and pretend that things are, you know, there's an easy way out of this, because I don't think there is.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or comments? We're almost up at the hour. What's the difference? Provisions, we all need a minimum of 3 or 4 months food supply, says Norm. What's the difference? Take the shot and be dead? I don't know. What is the difference? Because, you know, you take the shot and you're not really dead. You live under their control, which is, in my opinion, slightly worse. So Walter, if you could turn off your video, that would be great. Thanks. And your mic, we're just recording here. Thank you so much. So how do you feel about that? Any other comments?
I would really suggest that the people who want to take action on this start communicating across the country. And the National Council is trying to coordinate this, but it really requires people, whether it's the local sheriff or others, who want to take action. We'll talk offline about this. And, you know, I think there can be other things we do off this communication. We need to revive that national meeting of conveners as well, just start coordinating this. We were too busy this week to do it, but we have to start doing that again.
So you're breaking up, your internet's breaking up a little bit there, Kevin. Michelle,
oh, sorry.
Build a greenhouse on the south side of your house. Great idea, Michelle, like you have done, and have food year round. No community without communication, says Patricia. So any other questions or comments before we close out? How about a summary?
I think it's further along than we realize, is my reading. And I don't think they necessarily have to come to the door unless you're targeted. They'll rely on people's fear and knowing your food supply is going to be shut up to force people to do it, right? It's the Canadian way of doing it. But you got to do a lot of soul searching right now, each one of us, about how much we're willing to do, how much it means to us, our liberty and our children, right? And we can't answer that for each other. We can only answer for ourselves, but then we need to take action and organize being proactive now, taking it now. And I don't think we should let anything or any other issue distract us right now, because it could mean life and death. You know, this is life and death.
And I think everybody, you know, with a sovereign mind and loving heart can work right now from where they are. You know, I wasn't in a group or didn't have a meeting to email the MLAs and the MPs and the police. I didn't, you know, you have to be self-directed. And again, when you own your own authority, you don't need permission to write a letter. You don't need someone to tell you what to do. You don't need someone to give you a job. You just know what's important to you and you do it right now. Because we don't have time, really, you know, to talk a lot about what we're going to do. We just have to get there and do it. So that's my advice is, you know, to ask yourself right now, what are you doing to shift the paradigm, and what can you do?
Thanks, Tina.
Running after time, I'm very scared, but again, I think it's important. The fear kind of gets you moving, but then I think you have to kind of rise to a higher vibration into love and kind of spiritual awareness. And if God is your highest authority, you don't have to worry about what the health minister or the police or anybody else is doing. You know, it's just you and God, and you know what to do. So even though the fear kind of gets us moving in the right direction, because there's a lot of people now that are just sitting, waiting for someone to tell them what to do, right? They're just sitting back in their house, just waiting with the mask on, right? In the purse, in the whatever, in the glove compartment of their car. And, you know, this is the fear that needs to get them moving, but then you have to attach to a higher power in order to kind of move your way through.
It is a spiritual battle, and that's what we're down to right now, right? What we're facing. So this thing is after our souls. It isn't just after our bodies, you know. So
I said,
yeah, I just want to chime in here. I am with Peter, our sheriff. You know, I would rather die than take this vaccine and become a half human, half machine, because that's, you know, that is the plan. But I mean, like Dena, you say we are all light workers here, and we just have to step out and start acting. And once we act together, that energy, that high vibe is just gonna elevate us even higher. And I think this is what we need, is just stay in the light and high vibe, and we're gonna win. We're the light workers. You know, stay positive. Above all, stay in that high vibe.
thank you, Dana. That's beautiful.
good note to end on. Thank you, everyone.
The last point I'd just like to make is that I think not everybody's going to kind of get that passage. I don't know. I see it like an Ark of the Covenant, where you're vibrating at a certain frequency, you get a passage to move through. So those who are in fear and resentment, you know, we're not going to, it might be family and friends. It's not going to be that you're going to take everyone with you. But I think the spiritual ask right now is, what are you willing to do? How far are you willing to go? How deep can you love? And when you ask those questions for yourself, I think the path becomes clearer.
Hello, Dena. Is this Dena?
You could call me that.
I want to talk to you. I want to talk for a bit because I'm Walter and I'm just really scared. I'm very scared about this and those stuff. I'm not even dealing with the common law citizenship anymore. I'm more scared of, like, we're gonna die with a bullet in our heads right now.
Okay.
Like, I've applied for common law citizenship too. I've applied for Republic of Kanata to a citizenship week like 3 weeks ago, and I haven't got a response. But I don't care about that anymore, because it doesn't matter if you're common law or free men. The bullet will still come on our head, because as Mao Zedong said, politics rules from a barrel of a gun.
Hey, Walter, we can talk offline, okay?
Yeah, we're just about to close out, Walter.
Thanks, Walter.
We put our information in there, mine and Kevin.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
If I just might say one thing, we had a question about citizenship and how can it protect us? Citizenship doesn't kind of protect you. You protect yourself. It just gives you a new nation, right? So it gives you something to hold on to other than the corrupt, government. So that would be thought I'd end on. So I just want to thank you all for being here, and thank you for your contribution to keep a loving high vibration. Focus on what you want, to allow everything else to go out of
Yes, and I wanted to just squeak one thing in before we settle up for tonight, and just from an administrative point of view. And that is, when you get on these calls, if you want to connect with people in your local area, put the town that you live in beside your name, and then take on your own accord to connect with those people. Create your own cell groups, because we need to become, yes, centralized and intelligent, but also decentralized and powerful within our localized area, and connect with those people in your town.
Right.
Right.
The one other thing I wanted to announce to further connect with people in your local area, someone had asked quickly about Earth United, Jesse Perez. He is doing a lot to create a global network to connect people that are interested in common law. It's not tied to any particular republic or constitution. I agree with what Dana said before in terms of we've grown something here, we've got something great, let's not give it up. I am totally for that. This platform can be used to connect with other like-minded people, other common law people that perhaps join us, or perhaps we can work as a sub-cell together. So again, a decentralization will be quite important in the future. Some people will heed that advice and download that app on December 10th. That's the day for it, December 10th, and some won't, and that's good because we shouldn't all jump into one thing anyway. That's it.
Great, thanks, Dylan. So have a good night, everyone. Kevin, do you have any closing remarks?
Just kind of a joke. It's my monkey side coming out. Maybe Jesse can loan us $1 billion.
I didn't give him a donation. Okay, have a good night.
Hey, Kevin.
Thank
Kevin,
you,
guys.
See you all later.
Here,
What
bye-bye.
platform?
Thank
Kevin?
you.
Good night.
Bye.
Kevin, what platform are you on?
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.